Well, hello. Oops, I hit the wrong button. Hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Let's get the music back. Welcome to the Critique of the Week. So glad you could join me. This might be a short episode. I'm not sure how it's going to go. I feel mostly fine, but I'm a little under the weather. I have like a thing, like my throat, my voice. I kind of lost it completely yesterday. It's back. I'm drinking tea. I don't know. I don't feel bad otherwise, except I have a cough and like my, I don't know, my voice is gone. So we'll see how long I can last. But anyway, the Critique of the Week is always a lot of fun. Looking over poems, giving that workshop experience. It's so valuable if you're in an MFA program. But we do it for free here every Friday at, what time is it? 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Rose Narcissus allergies. It could be. I've never had allergies affect my voice like that, though. Yeah, Nancy Tell says allergies, too. Does that happen? Like you can lose your voice just because of allergies? That's interesting. But anyway. Yeah. Dick says someone needs to learn how to take a day off. That's what Katie told me too. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I don't want to, it's fun. I enjoy doing it. I think we're just going to go through the oldest poems in the queue though. I didn't see anybody who's a regular. But who do we have here? We have Nancy Sabanix here, Lynn Schilling, Dee Coleman, Cindy Guntherman, Rose Lenard, Steve Harrell, Morgan Feeney's here, Danette Bermia, Tara Meslick McMahon, Rachel Grieve is here, Mark Grinier, Jamie Thomas, Desi Cochrane, Patty Arbor, Dr. Q, CLAS, Dick Westheimer, of course, Katie Dozier. Hey, Katie. Winston Munn's here, Sharon Ferrante, Ollie Rowland, all the way from Northumberland, Rahaf S.A., great to see you again. Clayton Clark is here, Christina Newman, Zachary May, Drya Monteado. We got a great crowd. Linda Meg, Michael Antrobus from Marietta, Georgia, Elizabeth Brown. Yeah, so great everybody on hand. We're going to go through the oldest poems in the queue, and they date back to January 3rd. As always, we're going to do, say what works and what doesn't, how to help out, just how we feel about the poems. That's the most valuable thing we can provide. Just honest, well-meaning criticism is what we give here. It's our answer to the fact that we can't give criticism on submissions. Yeah, and remember to click the like button too, without being told. Thanks for saying that, Rachel. Amy redacted as 2 in the queue. Yeah, what is Amy? Remind me again, what is... I gotta be able to find you is the thing. And I know you've mentioned before what they're under, and I think Amy is in the subject line. It is a little difficult, though, to scroll. There's 182 on there. Yeah. Oh, we read yours last week. Okay. Yeah. I still haven't sent out the notice yet. Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, let's take a look at these poems first. Oh, I should say, too, for all of you who participate in Reddit, which apparently has a huge community, we're going to do an Ask Me Anything for Reddit next week. Let me pull this up, and I can put the link in. Katie's the one who set this up and figured out that Reddit's a very big community and has there's like over 1 million people in this poetry subreddit. And we're going to do an Ask Me Anything about Rattle and about the Rattle Poetry Prize. If you use Rattle, make sure to go over there and ask us anything. It'd be embarrassing if nobody asks us any questions, although they do seem excited to have us there. A lot of fans. Okay, still drinking the tea. Let's take a look at the first poem up. The first poet is Sam Saper from Jersey City, New Jersey. He's got 2 poems for us. One's pretty short. Any general questions? No. But you can find lastweeknewyorker.review is a website that Sam included. Last week's New Yorker, a scan of the features, 1 week belated, completely unofficial and unsolicited. So it's a newsletter Sam's got going. Last week's Newyorker.review if you want to check that out. But here are Sam's 2 poems. First up, we have Grounded. Yeah. Oh, Dick says what date and time. Yeah, it's next week. I should have said that. Yeah, the Ask Me Anything on Reddit is next week. And the time is 1 p.m. Eastern on June 13th, Friday the 13th. But yeah, you can put questions in there ahead of time, but we'll be sitting there answering them for about an hour. And looking forward to it. There's a famous Reddit, famous to me anyway, that the Paris Review editors did, where they admitted that they never publish anything unsolicited, pretty much. That everything comes from an agent, which is just wild. But anyway, that's the Reddit. Let's go check out this poem now. This is, once again, Sam Saper. And here we go. Let me zoom in a little bit. Now, sometimes you get these formatting issues with the preview or different file types on Submittable. We try to ignore them as we're reading submissions. We really, if the poem's great, it doesn't matter if the formatting is weird, but sometimes this happens. Grounded. And it's after Hand-Holding Egg, Charles Ray, 2007. The egg's enclosure opens into void, and the wrist holding the egg also opens to the same gray between space, museum air, the touch of the guard's eyes behind you, suspended in it. Sometimes things grow from soil, expound their beanstalk logic of smooth upward, but soil is itself a rope of ropes, a baroque emblem of change, since soil is not earth, but the memories of past earth rendered on that same cruel timeline. Their chronology of being is stilted, vertical, too fragile to unfold, nothing like an egg, trembled and bold, to a well-spackled bone, a versatile neutral, which cracks when pressed or faced with force, but opens otherwise, self-contained, uncompromised by all not in its orbit, and imagine the sun core spinning its come-clear albumin satellite in infinite geographical spirals, its convex mirror, like you might hiccup after a fight. It's all going back out the same way it came up. So you hear a really nice rhythm and pacing in that poem, good music to it, grounded. After Hand-Holding Egg, Charles Ray, 2007. Let me see what comes up if I Google that. I'm curious. But good rhythm, good sense of pacing in that poem. It was fun to read. This is from Christie's website. And here's the actual photo. Photo that it's referring to. There you go. Hand-Holding Egg. And again, the poem. So that kind of helps out a little bit. And it's nice to live in the 21st century where we can just Google any, we don't have to imagine the egg that it's written after. We can just Google it. The egg's enclosure opens into void. I don't know what that symbol is supposed to be. Is it a dash? If the wrist holding the egg also opens, I think that's a dash, an M dash. And the wrist holding the egg also opens to the same gray between space, museum air, the touch of the guard's eyes behind you suspended in it. So that's nice. And I, having actually seeing this image, the poem really comes to life. Oops, we don't want that. The poem comes to life even more than it already had. Move this over. Okay. Some things grow from soil, expound their beanstalk logic of smooth upward. But soil is itself a rope of ropes, a baroque emblem of change. So I like these riffs too. We let the poet is letting himself drift and kind of play, and I think in a fun way. So going to sometimes things grow from soil is a nice transition from the opening, which described the art piece pretty well. But soil is itself a rope of ropes, a baroque emblem of change, since soil is not earth, but the memories of past earth render on that same cruel timeline. Their chronology of being is stilted. So here I get a little bit lost. But soil is itself a rope of ropes, a baroque emblem of change, since soil is not earth, but the memories of past earth rendered on that same cruel timeline. Their chronology of being is stilted, vertical, too fragile to unfold. Yeah, I'm not quite rocking that. Nothing like an egg, tumbled and bold to a well-speckled bone. A versatile neutral which cracks when pressed or faced with force, but remains otherwise self-contained. Uncompromised by all not in its orbit. And imagine the sun core spinning its come-clear albumin satellite in infinite geographical spirals, its convex mirror like you might hiccup after a fight. It's all going back out the same way it came up. So I don't know. I mean, I read it through twice kind of because I like the sounds of it. I like the music of it. I like the rhythm of it. It sets something up, but then I'm not following it after the fact. And let's see what everybody else is saying. Yeah, Morgan Phoenix says, I'm not 100% who they is in their chronology. Yeah. Amy Redacted says, lovely fluid and specific nouns and verbs and whatever, but it's long and also vague. Kimberly Gibson Trans says, but remains otherwise self-contained is more telling than showing. I prefer the showing parts. Amy says, a lot of meat, no bone. Yeah. Yeah, Ali Rowland says, I get lost a bit in the lovely sounds, so the narrative line is not coming through as much as it could. Yeah, I'm just having trouble following it. Anthony Rongan says, somewhat confusing. Deb T says, there's something intriguing about it, but I do get lost. That's just how I feel, too. I'm not sure what else to say about it. Morgan Phoenix says, I wonder if Grounded is the best title for the poem. I came back to it at the end and don't get that nice little dopamine rush of understanding. Yeah. So we're all feeling very much the same. There's some, so we set up the image very well. Yeah. Rachel Grieve, I'm trying to figure out what it's trying to say. And Terry Meslick McMahon says, not feeling the narrator. The setup is good, but then what? Yeah. I mean, I'm tempted to just read it a third time. Maybe I can get something. I don't know. So, an egg's enclosure opens into the void, and the wrist holding the egg also opens. I think great description. To the same gray between space, museum air, the touch of the guard's eyes behind you, suspended in it. Sometimes things grow from soil. Expounded their beanstalk logic of smooth upward. But soil is itself a rope of ropes. I don't know. A baroque emblem of change. Yeah. Hammett Malk says, oops, slept in. Hi and listening. Hey, Hammett. Yeah, Tamarla says, there are so many rich images and a little clarity could produce a superior piece. I mean, that's just how I feel. I don't know what to make of it. Sharon Fry says, I like the beginning, then I don't know. So we're just saying the same thing. I don't know. I mean, I like that we let ourselves leap into this sort of reverie. Some things grow from soil, but then it needs to be resolved. Some things grow from soil. And so we talk about soil, and then we go, the next stanza, we transition to nothing like an egg. So this is like, the egg is not like this. The egg is not growing from soil. It's tumbled and bowled to a well-spackled bone, a versatile neutral, which cracks when pressed or faced with force, but remains otherwise self-contained. Uncompromised by all not in its orbit, and imagine the sun core. I mean, Mark Grinish says, I think there's something here about birth and conception going on, but I don't really know. Yeah, and Jamie Thomas says, I hate being locked out of it because I love the language. Dick Westerman says, the poet is grooving too much on being mysterious. It's inscrutable. Yeah, I mean, it is. It's just, so you got to give us more. Like, throw us a bone so we know what's going on. No pun intended. And that'll help the poet, or that'll help us appreciate the poem more. I mean, in the end of the day, it's a disappointing poem. It's like a letdown because we love the language and the sounds and the images that it evokes, but then we don't understand what it's doing. And then the last stanza, like you, might hiccup after a fight. It's all going back out the same way it came up. I don't know. I just don't know what to make of it. Let's move on and see the next poem. This is Overdraft. The sun rages like authority at insouciance, bringing its ruler down hot on limbs and palms. Hold out your hand. I have candy peels for sweet children, and in my shirt pockets a paradise of loss. There on the corner, the shadow of an Araber's time-worn cry yells to break free of fresh apples, rise above melons, red to the rind. Yeah, and again, this another poem that you'd say the same thing about it as the last poem. There's nice musicality to it, great rhythm. It's fun to read. I guess Katie learned insouciance a week ago, and that's one of those words I learned it a week ago too. Maybe we learned it together. What is Casual lack of concern. That's right. Or indifference. Insouciance. It feels, John Ashbery-ish in the way it rolls out its images and doesn't connect the dots into a full story. And I don't know. I mean, some people like poetry that way. Personally, I don't. It's not the kind of poetry for me usually, although I do love some John Ashbery. It depends. When it works, it can really work. We'll overdraft. We'll read it one more time, see if we can make anything out of it. Overdraft. The sun rages like authority at insouciance, bringing its ruler down hot on limbs and palms. So who would the ruler of the sun be? I mean, so much of the struggle is not knowing who, like what the relationships are. Like we didn't know who the they was that was referenced in the last poem. We don't know who the ruler is. Who would the ruler of the sun be? Yeah, Rahaf S.A. says, the imagery, metaphor, and rhythm in both poems is so good, but that's it. So Rose Thunder says ruler is in a cane for punishment. Oh, it brings its ruler down like that. Okay. That's part of the thing with, being vague is that so many times which definition of a word is just based on the context. Insouciance. Thanks, Deb T. Yeah, I want to look up this word too. Arabers. I don't know what that is. Arabers. That is a street vendor or hawker selling fruits and vegetables from a colorful horse-drawn cart, once common sight in American East Coast. Okay. So a street vendor. Okay, we'll read it one more time. I do. It's a fun poem to read. The sun rages like authority at insouciance, bringing its ruler down hot on limbs and palms. Hold out your hand. I have candy peels for sweet children, and in my shirt pockets a paradise of lost. And that reference to Paradise Lost is interesting. There on the corner, the shadow of an Araber's time-worn cry yells to break free of fresh apples, rise above melons red to the rind. Rise above melons red to the rind. Overdraft. I don't know. I mean, there's just, if you compare that to a successful, in my opinion, Ashbery poem, there's a bit more personal, sense to it. Like there's some kind of I going on, even if it's a distinct or distant kind of I in an Ashbery poem. Whereas here, we had I pulled this up as the example off. Maybe I shouldn't do that one. Let's see. Well, never mind. We won't do that. We spent enough time on this poem already. But I just I like to know more insight into what's going on and have a sense that it went somewhere, that the journey meant something. And the sounds are great in the poem and the images are great, but I'm feeling like I didn't take anything away from it. I think that's how I felt about both poems. And what can you do? You can have more clarity and let us know a little more about what's actually going on. And you can do that by just adding more detail about the setup, that who, what, why, where, when. You can put that in the title and that helps a lot. That's something you can do. Just give us some context so we can actually appreciate the poem, where there's a nice, rhythm and music coming out of that sort of grooving and riffing as Dick Westheimer put it. But if we have some context for that, we can appreciate it a lot more. But as it stands, we just end up not really knowing what to take from it. And it ends up being forgettable because we don't know where to place the experience. Okay, let's move on to the next poem. Once again, that though was Sam Saper from New Jersey. And next up is Joe Barca. Oh, hello, Joe. Yeah, Joe would be here very often, I'm sure, but he plays pickleball right now. It's a pickleball time. And this is from January 4th. Got 2 poems. Does he have questions? No specific questions, just wants to look us over these 2 poems. And knowing Joe, he's one of the Poetry Space squad. By the way, the other episode of the Poetry Space, the follow-up, just dropped to our copyright and fair use. So Katie and Dozier and I, although we are not lawyers and it's not professional legal advice, talk about our understanding, or my understanding of fair use and copyright over the years. Really a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings about what fair use is and what that means. So we resolve and talk about all that on the Poetry Space. That's Katie's podcast that just releases every Friday. So it just came out. You can find that wherever your podcasts are found, Spotify, iTunes, whatnot. And if you're had any wonder, ever wonder about centos and fair use and things like that, check out that episode. Really fun. I enjoyed it. Okay, here's Joe Barker's poem. The training wheels came off. He's got two sort of standard sized poems, I would say. We'll zoom in a little bit again too. Okay. The training wheels come off. It's November in New England. The sun sits low like a crow's shadow. The little girl is 5 years old. Her Schwinn bicycle hits a bump. She falls, screams. The earth envelops her. Her mother's guilt pools like water. Her telephone fingers are frantic. In the spring, the bicycle rises up. The little girl rides like a neat newborn deer. The mother rubs her hands together, again and again, worry beads. The little girl turns the bend. The bicycle is a kite without string. The mother breathes out and in. A white smith shapes a metal jacket on her heart. Fledgling light illuminates the sky. So that's the first of two poems. Training wheels come off. A really nice setup. So this is, you can take a lot, it's a different style of poetry is the last poem. But here, we understand where we are, and that lets us appreciate the poem so much more. The wordplay and the language isn't quite as musical or leaps aren't quite as far. And yet the poem, because it's written in a down to earth way where we know the context, it's just much easier to appreciate. And let's see. Yeah, Dick Westerhammer says, love the scene setting, but the crow's shadow metaphor does not work for me. Kimberly Gibson Trent says, telephone fingers is nice. Kimberly Gibson Trent, again, the title is a bit cliche. Great narrative, says Ali Rowland. Melody Bonilla says, clear narrative, though it isn't as musical. Rose Leonard says, I like the specificity, but Schwinn doesn't add anything to me. Okay. Yeah. Well, let's read it again a little more slowly and appreciate it here. The training wheels come off. So again, that's a title that sets the stage. We know what's going on. We're in the moment where the training wheels are coming off the bike. And it could be, before we read it, it could be a metaphor. It would be a nice title for something unrelated to training wheels, but we kind of get right away that that's where when the little girl is. The training wheels coming off. It's November in New England. The sun sits low like a crow's shadow. It's interesting. Dick Westheimer said that metaphor doesn't work, and somebody else said they really love it. And that's the thing about when you push metaphor pretty far. It comes, some people love and some people hate. There's this does it work or not? And when you're pushing a metaphor into depth, sometimes it goes both ways. To me, I think it's interesting. It's not literally true. Like, it's hard to visualize, but still there's an essence to it that I think works well. Rose Leonard says crow's wing. Interesting. Morgan Feeney says, I found this a little surreal. After the third stanza, I thought the girl had died, and then I wasn't so sure when rereading it. Okay, anyway. The little girl is 5 years old. Her Schwinn bicycle hits a bump. She falls, screams, the earth envelops her. Her mother's guilt pools like water. Her telephone fingers are frantic. In the spring, the bicycle rises up. So somebody pointed out in the spring, where Ali Rowland says, I would have liked to have an indication that in the spring is not an enjambment. Yeah, so this is and I think Joe writes this way frequently, without punctuation, and where the stanza breaks, it's almost like the couplets, it's almost taken from the ghazal a little bit, where the couplets, there's a full stop at the end. They're each contained units. And I think you can kind of forget that as you read through, and that's the trouble, is sometimes you misread it and don't realize how big the leap really is, the break in time. So too, she falls and screams, the earth envelops her. And you can kind of feel that there's an end there. Her mother's guilt pools like water. Her telephone fingers are frantic. And then in the spring could be enjambment. So they're frantic in the spring. And I kind of forget and read it that way myself. And so I think maybe if you extend that, her telephone fingers are frantic, and get a little bit more into that image. And then when we jump to in the spring, we'll know that it's a new transition, but there's not that pause that you would get from having a period. And that's one of the dangers of having poems that don't have punctuation. Yeah. And then Deb T says the earth envelops her. Could be misleading. Perhaps another verb besides envelops. Yeah. She falls, screams, the earth envelops her. Someone else said she thought the girl had died. And that's kind of what that implies. So I do agree. I think that's a difficult word there. And I'd probably find a different way to phrase that. To me, I think the crow's shadow is like pushing a metaphor a little far in a way that works. And I think the earth envelops her is not. I think it's a little bit... The way that metaphor is wrong and doesn't quite works in a way that ends up being confusing rather than sort of making you think a little more about it. Yeah, somebody said too, that the poem, I can't find the comment again. Where was it? Oh, here it was Tom Barlow. Says, I thought at first this was about the girl, but it's the mother's story. Perhaps we should see her first. And I thought that too. I thought that was a good comment. Because it ends up being more about the mother. It would make sense if we saw the mother, early on looking at the girl. And then we had that perspective, so it feels more consistent throughout the poem. Yeah. There's some talk about the Schwinn, too. The little girl is 5 years old. Her Schwinn bicycle hits a bump. I think it was Rose Leonard who said that the specific detail of the Schwinn was nice, but didn't seem to add anything. And I think, to me, the poem... I like details like that in poems when they're specific, if it's consistent throughout the poem. If it's something that's doing a lot. If we have a lot of details about type of brands or what, those kind of specific things. But the poem in general is more general. I don't know. I kind of agree. Katie Dozier, though, says Schwinn is a representative, as a typical bike. And because of that, I would cut it as it becomes like an adjective that isn't actually modifying our assumption without specifying. And yeah, so Katie's agreeing too. I would cut the Schwinn. To me, it's because the poem has a sort of timeless quality. Like, we set November in New England, but it could be any November in New England. And just having it be a bicycle, it's already generic, just a bicycle, and a Schwinn is just a typical bicycle. And so I would cut that. But it's about keeping it consistent with the rest. If we had, other specific details, which the name of the street, the kind of, like, I don't know, leggings that she skinned, broke when she skinned her knee or something like that. If there were a lot of details like that, then I think it works. But to have one detail that's specific to a brand, it makes it stand out in a way that just doesn't fit with the rest. It's almost like a register. It's a different kind of register, how much specific detail you have. And it feels off because the rest of the poem isn't in that register of detail. Yeah. Peter Damon says, disagree, everyone knows what a Schwinn is. Well, that's the thing. Everybody knows, so it doesn't add anything. It's not that the Schwinn is a strange thing. It's just... Oh, Roseland says, I don't think we have Schwinn bikes in the UK, so it threw me. Yeah. And everyone is a pretty big group. There's no reason we should be talking about what kind of bicycle it is. It just doesn't matter. And it throws you off in the poem, so I would cut it for that reason. That's a better way to say it, I guess. Yeah. Anyway, let's continue reading the poem here. Her mother's guilt pools like water. Her telephone fingers are frantic. In the spring, and I guess too, if we don't have a way to extend this line to make it so it's not feeling like jammed into the spring, there's a different way you could phrase in the spring. When spring comes, the bicycle rises up. We need, because we don't have punctuation, all the stanza breaks are the same. There's no punctuation. We don't know that there's a big leap there. So saying, when spring comes, the bicycle rises up, the little girl rides like a newborn deer, because we said it's November at first when she falls, but then spring comes and she is riding again. And so we need to know that jump in time. And so I would just change it a little bit to say, to signify just with the way that the sentence is written, that we're transitioning in time. It's a flash forward. The bicycle rises up, the little girl rides like a newborn deer. I like that too. The newborn deer. The mother rubs her hands together again and again, worry beads. The little girl turns the bend. The bicycle is a kite without a string. The mother breathes out and in whitesmith shapes. I'm not sure what that means. Whitesmith shapes. Another thing to look up. A person who makes articles out of metal, especially tin. Oh, so it's like a blacksmith versus a whitesmith. Oh, I never heard of that before. Interesting. Okay. What's the difference between a blacksmith and a whitesmith? Blacksmiths work primarily in iron and steel, while whitesmiths traditionally work with tin and pewter and other white metals like silver. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, the bicycle is a kite without string. I like that. The mother breathes out and in whitesmith shapes. I'm not sure what that means. A metal jacket on her heart. Fledging light illuminates the sky. So to me, I like the setup. I like that we're there. I'm not sure that the last line lives up to the story that we're being given. Like it feels again like a bit of a letdown. Like we have the scene set up. You know, the training wheels are coming off. You know, it's well described, all the ways that the girl hits the bump, she gets injured, you know, and then it waits till spring to do it again. You know, a bunch of crows outside, speaking of the crow's shadow. But anyway, but then I feel like the ending, it doesn't, I think the ending, you want to like have a transition, like it's sort of set up where, because everything is so clear, we have room to have a kind of leap or some bigger jump. And some kind of, I don't know, something more interesting. And I think it's going for that. You know, the whitesmith shapes, I'm not quite sure what that means. A metal jacket on her heart. But then going to the fledging light, that seems kind of like a broad, general, like poems tend to go to the light in the sky. And it's, I don't know, I would like the last line to make the whitesmith shapes make sense. I guess that's what I'm thinking. And if that did, I think the poem would work. But the fledging light illuminating the sky is just sort of a, I don't know how that ties into anything. And I still don't really understand how the whitesmith shapes and the metal jacket of her heart fit together. And so I think that the last line, I think the impulse is to leap into that space and push the poem far, which I think was correct. But then I don't think the last line does it. Let's see. Yeah, Kimberly Gibson Dran said too, I don't understand the light at the end. It feels like an attempt to manufacture a positive tone. It's a better way to put it than I said, but that's how I feel too. But it hasn't quite been earned, maybe. Sorry. Or the image needs to be more concrete and less abstract. Oh, okay. Soros says shapes is a verb here. And, you know, I guess what's going on is because of, I didn't read it that way. It's because I'm so trained by the poem to read each without the line breaks. So I guess we're having trouble because of this enjambment with no punctuation. I was reading it like this stanza had to be self-contained. But really the break, so that the missing punctuation, the mother breathes out and in, and then a new sentence, the whitesmith shapes a metal jacket on her heart. And so I think we get really, to me, I get lost because there's no punctuation, and it's not done in a way that doesn't, lose those ambiguities. Just as far as what the poem means. So if we had, a full stop where it was a new stanza, this part would work because we're trained to read the poem as, yeah. I mean, just punctuation would really help, as Elizabeth Brown says. And I don't know, if you're not going to have punctuation, it's got to, you have to be gaining something by it. And you do, the poem like looks pretty, like it's kind of nice to be able to pull it off. But you have to be consistent about its use and notice where it creates these ambiguities where we read the poem wrong. Yeah. Peter Damon says, I get fledgling light, but not metal jacket. A metal jacket is something that a bullet is encased in. D. Coleman says, if you leave off a whitesmith shapes, it makes more sense. The mother breathes out and in, a metal jacket on her heart. Yeah. So, I don't know. I think the ending isn't quite right. And I just, I wonder, if you're going to not have punctuation, you're not going to capitalize sentences and stuff, there's a reason why those exist, and it's to make reading easier. Famously, M.S. Merwin, or W.S. Merwin, man, maybe I am a little brain foggy too, writes a whole string of poems without punctuation. And there's some good ones in Rattle over the years. It can work. It just has to be, you have to be really conscious of clarity when you have no punctuation. And that makes it, yeah. Diamantito says, the girl who is without training wheels is like a fledgling that can be a good metaphor. That the sky's light is also like a fledgling is unnecessary. How about making an actual fledgling in the last line? That's a good suggestion. Jenny Middleton says, I think the metal jacket is about self-protection. Letting go is painful. And it's good to see you over here on the YouTube, Jenny. I'm glad you got a YouTube to work. Thanks. Yeah. Anyway, let's read the other poem and this is a prose poem. Here we go. I think I might have to shrink it to get it to fit. Yeah. Oops, wrong direction. Okay. And we'll get rid of this. Okay, there we go. We can barely get it in. I sip generations. And again, this is Joe Barca's poem. I sip generations. I order Earl Grey with almond milk at Starbucks. 2 tea bags. I'm wild like that. My mother is at the bottom of my paper cup. She wraps her hands around chipped china. Reader's Digest in her lap, listening to talk radio. In the steam of my mother's cup is her father, holding his mug of Irish breakfast tea, singing frivolous Saul off key. Overcooking another chicken. In the tea dust at the bottom of his cup is my great Aunt Nora, 101 years old. She makes me memorize a poem. It starts like this. Christmas is coming. The goose is getting fat. Please put a penny in the old man's hat. My daughter meets me in a coffee shop in Brooklyn. She hates hot liquids, orders pumpkin cream cold brew. She's bold like that. I draw a family tree for her on a napkin. Yeah. Yeah, Jenny says, I love the fun of this poem and the beauty and the details. And notice how, because, Joe's style is very straightforward, and he tells a story and lets us know what's going on, even though he sort of, has imaginative leaps within the poems. And so, but the voice itself is pretty straightforward, and, he tells the story. And so having punctuation just lets us appreciate that more. Yeah. Morgan Phoenix says, I really like the rhythm and the internal rhymes of this. It really drives the poem forward. And Diamantito says, I like that napkin. This one sticks the landing. Let's see. Deb T says, lots of good punctuation in this one. Yeah, I mean, we just don't get confused in the syntax of that. Somebody was pointing out where did that go? I lost it. Somebody was talking about the M dashes in the as a pet peeve. Maybe that comment got deleted. I didn't see it again. But yeah, it's probably the thing that I end up deleting the most in published poems and editing the most. There's no space around em dashes, and so we do want to take those out. And somehow, although I do in emails, I do that lazily, but for publishing in print, you don't have a space around the em dash. I Sip Generations is the title. And I wonder if the title could be better. I really like the poem. I like that we know where we are. Of course, all that setup stuff that we've been talking about all episode is here because we know we're sipping Starbucks or tea at Starbucks, so we enjoy that. I think the title is so close to the poem itself without adding anything that I think we could it's a missed opportunity. I think the title could be doing more. Like even if it was generations, like just something a little bit removed from the topic, Yeah, as Deb T says, the title being something with a little bit more cut. Yeah. Janet McConaughey says the style book I used for 48 years required spaces around em dashes. Well, that's interesting. Maybe it's an old style book. What style book was it? I mean, Chicago is the main style guide for literary things, any novel, and they say no spaces around it. Winston Munn says the whole poem felt like a setup to me, and I'm expecting a haibun. Yeah, that could work too. There's always a prose poem. You find yourself wanting to add a haiku for a haibun. Well, let's read the poem again. I Sip Generations. I would do something that's more of a cut with the title. Even generations, or just some kind of extra thing you're thinking about. And if you don't want to make it a haibun, if you look at a lot of prose poems, it's really interesting once you notice. But the cut like you would have with a haibun, a lot of times the titles are working in that way. And so a lot of times you can see, the impulse to haibun in a prose poem being used within the title. So anyway, I Sip Generations. I order Earl Grey with almond milk at Starbucks, 2 tea bags. I'm wild like that. See, what I love most, I guess, is I'm wild like that. I love that voice, the humor of that, and the personal aside. I think it works really well in the voice of this poem. My mother is at the bottom of my paper cup, and I like the way that the bottom of the paper cup brings the memory of the mother. I think that's really, really nicely done too. She wraps her hands around chipped china, Reader's Digest in her lap, listening to talk radio, and the steam of my mother's cup is her father holding his mug of Irish breakfast tea, singing Frivolous Sol off key, overcooking another chicken. In the tea dust at the bottom of his cup is my great Aunt Nora, 100 years old. So one thing, I like this, the way that the details of the tea are bringing back memories. Yeah. But sorry if I was reading a comment. But I had a little trouble because if the steam's still coming from the cup, and the steam of my mother's cup is her father holding his mug of Irish breakfast tea, overcooking another chicken, in the tea dust. So if the steam's still coming, so I'm imagining, the tea still being hot. And so the dust implies it being dry. So maybe it's just a word choice of dust. Maybe a different word there. But it sort of split the time. There was sort of building this nice sort of connection between one image and the other, and that sort of threw it off a little bit to me. Oh, Danette Burmia says Breaking Tradition might be an interesting title. Yeah, like something in that direction. Yeah. Rosener says, yeah, tea leaves would be better at that than dust. At the bottom of his cup is my great Aunt Nora, 101 years old. She makes me memorize a poem. I like that too, that she makes him do that. It starts like this: Christmas is coming, the goose is getting fat. Please put a penny in the old man's hat. Another thing, Dick pointed this out, you want punctuation inside the quotation marks, and that's an English, I should say American style guide reference, and the British do it the other way. So another point, was it Rose Lennar, I think you said, you don't need, if it's italicized, you don't need the quotes. You can kind of pick one or the other, and both is unnecessary, and it feels smoother to just, and cleaner, just to have the one. So I would just italicize that and not have it quotes anyway. My daughter meets me in a coffee shop in Brooklyn. She hates hot liquids, orders pumpkin cream, cold brew. She's bold like that. I don't know about the she's bold like that. It's a throwback to I'm wild like that, but I think it takes away a little bit. I would probably cut that line. Orders pumpkin cream, cold brew. I draw our family tree for her on a napkin. And I like the way that ends too. So I think maybe a couple tiny tweaks in this one and then come up with a better title. And I think this one's good to go. That's my opinion on it. Morgan Phoenix says, I think the quote is a song, not a poem. It could be, I don't know. Mark Grinner says, dust works for me for the powdery residue left by brewing tea bags. Yeah, it would work if the cup was dry, like if the cup had been sitting there for so long, but the cup was steamy. And so it throws it off just on like a timeline level to me. Michael Antrobus says, I disagree about the cutting she's bold like that. He says, I disagree. She's bold like that makes the poem come full circle, I think he means. And I think it's not the, he says I'm wild like that. It's what it is the phrasing. The fact that it's the same setup makes it so, it's too self-conscious. It takes me out of the poem because the phrasing and the way that it's laid out is the same. The concept is fine. So for me, I think I might, you could keep it and say like, she's the bold one or something like that, where it was changing the way it was written. But it's too self-conscious. Like the writer emerges in that. And it makes you forget that you forgot yourself in the poem. It pulls you back into, I'm reading a poem, and that's a move that the poet made. And what we want to do is create this scene where we forget ourselves for a while and we become the speaker. And I think that pulls you out of that by having that too on the nose repetition. It's coming full circle with too much intentionality. And I think it'd be better off not having that. So you could keep the bold. I like the bold and the wild comparison. I like using that voice, but just phrase it in a different way slightly. PMB says she's wild like me. Yeah, she's wild like me, or she's wild too, or something like that. That would work. It's the repetitive. It's too conscious. It's too overt. So I would change that. But a couple tweaks and a better title, and I think this poem's good to go. Okay, thanks for sharing that, Joe. That's Joe Barker from Massachusetts. Let's take a look at another poem. We'll do one more. And I got to go right at the top of the hour, too. I should say, if you haven't clicked the like button yet, click sure you do. Click like. I'm impressed with myself. I've made it through the whole time with a scratchy voice. And it's still working, so that's good. Glad we got through a few poems today. Next up is going to be... let's see. I think the name is Shadow. Or AQIB, Shadow. Very large text. I have to shrink it down. Oh, here we go. And I think this is called Agony of Life. How difficult it is to endure this agony among those who are downhearted. Life could have been easier for us if we had learned to treat any pain. Where are you going? Spend a few days together. How difficult it is to light a lamp on a path. How easy it is to point the winds. Let's live life. Let's face it. Don't do this behavior to anyone again. Yeah. So this is sort of the in the first poem we had all this music and detail and language that were interesting, and then we couldn't figure out what to make of the poem. And with Joe's, we had the context and we're tweaking things. And here we don't have sort of either. There's, as Deb T says, a personal poem directed to someone who knows what it's about. So, think about, sorry, I should hit the cough button. Think about, Joe's two poems. There was this coffee shop scene set up, and we knew where we were. And even in the first two poems, we had some sense of like a scene emerging, like something happening. Here, it's so abstract that we don't have anything like that. There's nothing to like live within in the poem. How difficult it is to endure this agony among those who are downhearted. Like show us someone downhearted. Let us see what the agony is like. I do have a cup of hot tea, Deb. Thanks. And it's that yogi throat coat tea too, which with the slippery elm or whatever. Life could have been easier for us if we had learned to treat any pain. Where are you going? And who's the you? Spend a few days together. How difficult it is to light a lamp on a path. See, that to light a lamp on a path is the first like image we have. So we kind of get a little bit going on in the poem there. Let's live life. Let's face it. Don't do this behavior to anyone again. Like what behavior? We don't know anything about what's going on in this poem. Like we don't get it. It's a personal poem, and if you're going to be reading for an audience, you got to like tell us the actual story. We need to know what behavior it was. Okay, so let's move on. That's something. We need details. We need description. Like, who was it? Was it somebody said? Was it Kimberly Gibson Tran? Maybe said it felt preachy, and that's it. It's preaching at someone. We don't know who that is or what they did, and we need the story. Michael Antrobus says, "I'd like to have the poet first set the scene with some images before musing over the situation." And that's it. We need all the facts are left out. Says Dry Montieto. He says, "Here are the emotions. Here the emotions are explicit, but the facts are all left out." Also, the poem is very aggressive to the you, which makes me feel attacked, especially since no one told me what I did. So we need the story. We just don't get anything out of it unless we know what's going on. So tell us, set a scene, paint a picture, show us, tell us what happened, tell us what the you did, and then we can appreciate the poem. Okay. In that case, we'll do one more, because that was very quick. And actually, I think my throat's getting too tickly. And then we're going to wrap it up there. A bit of a short critique of the week. Thanks, everybody, for being here and being a part of it. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah. Thanks, Deb. Yeah, Deb said that too. Yeah, it's getting very tickly now. So we're going to wrap it up. But thanks, everybody. All the poets who shared, Joe Barca and Aquib Shadow, and the first poet too. I'm going to remind everybody, if you want to check out the Poetry Space, there's a fun episode that just released. I had my voice at that point, talking about fair use and copyright with Katie Dozier on her podcast. Find that at the Poetry Space, wherever you find your poems. And next week's guest in the Rattlecast is going to be Matt Mason. Now, Matt is the poet laureate, or was for, I think, 5 years, the poet laureate of Nebraska. He's a big fan of Rattle too, and has that sort of Rattle style where he's very down to earth, authentic and honest. He's got some spoken word elements too going on in his poems. And his most recent book is Rock Stars from Button Poetry, that wonderful, tends to be a spoken word press. It should be a lot of fun to talk to Matt. Now, the prompt for the Rattlecast. It was to write a Hyben. Let me see how exactly Katie wrote it down. The prompt was, write a different kind of Hyben than you have ever before that features a big leap. So a hymen that's new to you, try to stretch your wings a little bit and also include a big leap. That's the prompt for this week. The guest in the Rattlecast is Matt Mason. The regular time, Sunday, June 8th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you there. Hope you have a great week in the meantime, and we'll talk to you later. Also, let me say, don't forget about that Reddit. Leave some questions. It would be nice if we have a bunch of questions to answer when we pull up the next Friday. It's Friday, June 13th, over on the Our Poetry subreddit. We're going to have a Q and Ask Me Anything over there. So do find that and leave some questions for us. Hang out there. At the time, we'll be doing it too, right before the Critique of the Week. We set it up that way too. So at the end, we can direct some new people over here as well. And I'm sure I'll have my voice back completely by then. I feel a lot better than I did yesterday. Just a little bit too. But anyway, we'll be talking to Matt Mason this Sunday, June 8th, 8 p.m. Eastern. See you there. Hope you have a great week in the meantime. Goodbye.